I believe that's good. All right. Hey guys, just working on some stuff today, so I hope I'm an idiot. I already screwed something up. Painted over my sketch. So My mic's been down almost this whole time. So anyway, it's because I had some music going. I am talking now if you guys are watching. That's wonderful. Close that out and bring up this other image that I've got here. If anybody chats, I am watching the chat. So cool. All right. That tower is going to need to be a little more muted at some point. Also, let's get some of this other stuff happening here. Where is my... Just going to start throwing in some darkness in areas I know are going to need some trees and so forth. I'm just going to stick some dark areas and we can go back and do all of the details after the fact. This is just the main bulk of the bush. I think that's going to be a new song I write. The bulk of the bush. Perfect. Let's see. Maybe a little stuff here, obviously. And a little bit of it happening in front. These are really indicators, more than anything, of where the tree layout and so forth is going to be. Let's see, yeah, that guy would go there. I have a sketch here underneath, but I'm just making sure of what I meant, when I look back at stuff. It's pretty important to know what you meant to do with it. Like I say, I kind of want to erase these lines out of here so they're not as distracting, because they very much can be. Let's see, I know somewhere it's mostly this area, but then down from that, gonna have some bristliness that'll eventually be probably brown there, now that I think about it. That's all good. That's all good. This is more in this area. Sometimes I look at this and I'm like, wait a minute, is this a bush, a tree, a house on fire? I don't think it's any of those, but you never know. Alright, a little more maybe back here. Those would be mostly browns. Probably something for sure. This is mainly, like I said, to get the bulk color on these darker ones in the front. I wrote middle trees, but this is probably more trees than middle trees in general. There we go. That's good. Probably some stuff out and around here. Okay. Let's try. Definitely. This guy's going to be a lot more green and dark, but I'm throwing a little indicator here. And lots of browns. think overall that's a decent knockout of just where things are sitting depth-wise. Kind of like a value, block out there. I'm going to throw just a little bit of colors on a few things to kind of sort out some stuff. Let's just go with, let's lock that tower for the moment. No one can get in or out. Middle trees are in front. Okay. Doesn't really matter a ton, but it's enough that I need to do it and make sure I know what I'm doing. This sketch is going to get, it's just a guide. It's going to be much more refined look once the color blocking is kind of chucked on there. I like to work in blobs. So now I'm just going to throw in like something like, I'm going to call this pink houses, even though they're not pink. It's just a callback to John Cougar Mellencamp. I'm going to grab a color, something a little bit like the tower, to kind of keep the overall highlighted colors sort of drawn in. This will be not quite that, but something along those lines that will make a cohesive kind of feel for everything. Always starting light. I'm going to have to erase out some of these windows because they'll have white like edges to them and stuff. Something a little like that. Could go a little bit warmer with it, maybe, but maybe a little more like this. I can always lighten up the overall color too. That's another good idea for putting it on separate layers when you work, because I can go and affect just the houses layer if I don't like it, if it's not warm enough and stuff. I can just take this layer now and do an image adjust, the saturation or color balance or whatever. I think we're going to go with let's just go with saturation, see if turning up the saturation on that layer, yeah, warms it up just enough. That works. And then if it's too dark, I can always lighten it, intensify it, whatever you want. So there you go, that kind of thing. I'm going to kind of blend out, well, that corner first before I go and do anything else for the shadows and stuff. So I'm just going to sort of knock this in here a little. And then we can come back and do some shading. That's right, I can say that I'm Italian. Knock this down to about half of that. And just sort of throw in some wet wall edges or something like this. A little shadow running on the under the edge there, maybe like that. Get one piece, that way it doesn't get too weird. And like I said, we can always go back and do whatever kind of want to this. There we go, a little dampness or discoloration from the ground. Kind of nice. Throw a little bit of that in up in here maybe. I like the sort of, what do you call it, chaos of the watercolor, honestly. Alright, maybe a little rough up in here. the side, we can throw a little extra along the bottom edge. Okay. And with very small taps, we can sort of do some of this bit of blending here. Okay. Just gonna play with this one house a little bit first, just with some color. Try to get my sort of lightest color. That's probably still too dark for this, but it's all right. Sure, I can paint like Norman Rockwell. That's why I'm famous as a painter for painting Norman Rockwell pieces. Just kidding. That's the smart aleck in me coming out. I'm sure none of you ever assumed I had that going on. Alright, so I'm going to try and straighten up an edge here. You're like, you'll never straighten up. Probably true. Okay, and then go with that middle tree. I'm going to have to pull off some of this blue that's hanging over. Just kind of want to clean up that edge. Feel extra tired this morning, or this 11 o'clock. I'm going to go to the sketch layer, and I am going to erase just a little bit of these lines. Start cleaning up this overall look. And I think for this, I'm going to swap out my eraser brush for a general hard round. And that way it's just a little easier to see what I'm erasing. Trying not to get things too dark either. So back, I'm going to turn the sketch back locked, and I'm going to go back to my pink houses. These are all the ones that are going to be this particular color. I'm just going to make a little sort of window frames here. That will clean up when I do some paint over those. Let's see a little more here. Don't worry, guys. That sounds is just my chair making sounds. Don't want anybody think I've been out hanging out in Taco Bell or anything. All right, that's probably good there. Probably don't need a lot there. Something similar. All right, let's do some window stuff. I think that color is probably good for starters. For these panes, I'm just going to go ahead and erase out the color within here, because this isn't supposed to be here either right now. If you have any questions or like what you're seeing, let me know. I'm just doing my thing, so say hello if you like, if you're watching. If there's nobody, that's cool too. Alright, cool. My eyes are getting all blurry. My least favorite thing to work like. So let's go to here. And we will now throw in some of this upper window glass with the brush, I hope. Yeah, same thing on all these. These will get a little separation between them. Then go back and clean that up. The white, the eraser. Undo that one completely because I got two lines. Trying to keep these all sort of one pass so the color doesn't have a little blending line. I think that's fine. The lower one, a little bit of here. The door does not have it. This window might have a little. Okay, and then there'll be a white line and then a dark, like open window. So I'm just going to pull this down to something like this. Give us a dark section toward the bottom. And so these windows maybe are either open or, you know. So drawing a town or a neighborhood, either way, very difficult. It takes a lot of time, and it's probably the most difficult thing I could have been asked to do on this one. So I knew there would be something there. There always is, whether it's a sea of hair or you know, something that needs to be done. But sometimes it's a lot to do, so it must be done though. There's never an easy one. It's just there's no such thing. All right, so now I'm going to get rid of the pencil from the sketch layer here. Where's my sketch? This should be on top, to be honest with you. And we'll uncheck that for now. I'm going to come in and just erase anything on these window layers. They'll automatically start looking amazingly better because there's no ugly pencil lines running through them. For the most part, I probably don't have to do much to them, if anything. Maybe erase the little, I'm going to lock that again, the little lines might want to be a little bit slightly undone. Let me just make this way thinner, like maybe a 4. Something like that. Looks like they have a little bit of a paint, bleed over or something between them. I think that's pretty good. Maybe even a little on that one. It works. We'll go back and put that dark brown line on the bottom now. So I'm just going to sample probably my own house color. And then but paint over multiple times, use just a little bit bigger brush and just sort of hit this bottom edge more than once. Let's undo that. That was really bad. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing here. Kind of simulating like some of the moisture maybe coming up from the ground, or who knows, maybe a little more happening in this vicinity. This can all get kind of darkened down a bit. Just to give it that dirty, kind of soaked in dampness maybe, or even just the standard messiness of like a stucco wall or something like that, Now these on the sides need to have the same kind of treatment done here. So I'm going to, they don't need the big white edges. They're going to use very fine, thinner, edges. So let's go ahead and just sample I'm going to sample the window color. Go back to our lovely number 5. Lovely number 5. And just a small bit. These will have to be erased out, though, I just realized. So we'll go ahead and pull these out. These are real thin in comparison to the others. So I'm not going to be taking a huge amount out of the color here. Just enough to... I'm also going to up this a little bit to get more of a chunk removed instead of little fine lines. Do one here, I think. And we can go back in now with our color. Just kind of pull that in here, here. And then our darker version that needs to happen toward the bottom. This could even be smaller overall. Then we can come in with a like a 1-point eraser. Maybe 9 will be fine. So they just pop a centerpiece. Maybe that's too much. I think what I'm going to do also is get rid of those lines now. The sketch layer. Let's make this a little bigger. Pull all those lines off. Okay. And then back to lock the sketch layer. That was a Clash song, wasn't it? Lock the sketch layer. Lock the sketch layer. Get this even smaller. And just try to erase. Way smaller. Erase some of these midlines. And maybe a window frame. Not good, Sean, not good. If you want to do the midline, do the midline. And if you want to do the window frame, go back and do that. Those are definitely different widths. Then I can take my shift here, so it'll work out the and this probably needs to be like maybe at a 6. Oops. That stupid anomaly. It's a really weird glitch. All right, that's fine. Cool. All right, so kind of do that. I will be darkening and adding all kinds of stuff to this as we go, but maybe some chimneys on these little guys. Just borrow some of this. At least I know there's one about here. Get that wider now. Okay. Maybe erase a little snow into the top. And we're going to have to go back to those middle trees and make that part of that. And then I want to take this color and still, let's knock this down quite a bit. Give me kind of a line. Here and there. Sort of happening. That's probably need to pull the color out of the middle trees and repaint that. So we don't want this blue. So that works a lot better there. And then back here on L houses, we need to do the other chimney here. Okay. To start with, all right. Just kind of get an overview now of everything. It's kind of coming along. I say that kind of. I always hate it at this stage because it always looks like crap until it doesn't. Keep that in mind. Okay, let's see. Yeah. Some grayish on the roads to start doing these lines for the street. It's gonna sort of give me, well, it's a silly word to say, but grounding for a lot of this. And what I mean by that is just kind of starting to let's just add yet another layer. I'm going to do this as road brown. Bit bigger. Making sure we are in multiply mode. This will just give us a bit of connection to the ground. And yeah, let's pull this a little stronger here as well. It's just some. That's why I have these lines, so that there's some guidance of any of this kind of mess. Right now it's just kind of like darkness, but blobby lines, they'll make more sense though as we get farther along. I'm like, I promise. There may be a point where I go, I hate it, and just erase all the color and start over, so keep that in mind. All right. Let's go back to these middle trees. And pull some of this back in here. Have to do that part again. Kind of want these a bit dark. And I think with a bit of just a little greener in them. Let's see. Alright, so now a little bit of heavier here, maybe from the bottom as well. Definitely more here, as this is darker. And we'll start erasing out a little bit of window, door frame. Probably, yeah, like that. It could be a little more like so. A little bit of snow toward the roof. And then now we will come to the sketch layer, erase these. In fact, all of that for this, I believe. And then we can throw in a dark color for the opening of the door. Relock our sketch layer because I almost screwed up. This is going to be pink houses. I'm just going to go ahead and put this here. It's essentially part of it. A window. I think that works. Even just a little darker area up through here. That looks all right. All right, let's see. More bushiness all through here. Browns as well for dead stuff, but I'm just trying to think. Let's go and get some grays popped in here because that's going to make a huge difference. My layers are going to start kind of combining all into the same layer at some point here. Something I do want to do is on this middle tree is just delete or erase out this blue I threw in here and do this over with a green, and then we'll add some dark blue and whatnot to it that will kind of help take care of some of that nonsense. I'm also going to kill some of these lines on the street on the sketch layer. Now that the paint is in there, there's no reason for all of this kind of to be. I will eventually erase some of those branch lines, or all of them for that matter. I think getting back to straight paint, and then I can go in and put line work will be good for that. It's going to feel very blobby until we get to that point where there's a lot more like detail level anything coming on. But for now, I'm going to go grab the lightest color that I can of my greens here. Am I even doing that? Yes. And then I can come in and paint some of this tree here out. That needs to really be happening through here. And I'm going to avoid the browns for now. Just worry about this green tree. It's more of a gray-green right now. But you get the idea. Maybe even a little more of the green possibly this time. So we'll just grab something a little more toward the center. It might be a little more green than it was. Just start filling in a darker amount now. Or area. And I'm going to try and break this up enough to where there is enough light spots in here to kind of work like, you know, extra leaves and junk that's happening. A little extra paint through here. Not too much exposed though. Some extra junk happening over here. Doing some darker business. Tap, tap, move, tap, you know. It's really breaking it up if possible here. Try not to go too hard. Don't want to get things super colorful or anything. Luckily, if I need to, I can always go in and to some point, to some extent at this point, and tell it, you know, to desaturate just specific areas and stuff. So then I just kind of go the darkest parts where I want them. And for the most part, kind of achieved what we wanted, I suppose, with that little darker tree. And then we'll take our... We're not going to blend everything out. It's just going to be very light tapping of some of these areas. So I do like the watercolor edges and stuff going on. Of course, this will now... that'll work, and if we need to, we can always add a little bit of paper texture back over it. With our lovely paper texture guy. We got to be careful because on the darker stuff, it really, really brings it out quick. But I think that will be fine there. Getting a little bit blurry-eyed, so I got to be aware of that. So I'm going to just do a little bit of paper texture back on the house because it felt a little smooth and boring. Just kind of chuck some of this on. If we go back to like our middle trees and slightly touch this, we'll get a little bit of that breakup back in there for any of that. It just kind of adds some, see, that's way too much. It adds some texture back to the paper that seems to be overly wetted or not, you know, really standing out enough or whatever. Just got to be careful because it sneaks up on it when you see, like that one, real light here. Not sure why some of these, maybe it's because of how hard I pressed or whatever. You need to get that kind of back. So we'll go back in with a little bit of lines and draw in some of this stuff as well. Hey, just saw you, Slothcat. How's it going? I have a feeling, though, this tree may be a little dark, but we'll see in the grand scheme when it's all there and said and done. So I'm going to go in with some brown now and do my sort of brownish crap. I don't want to get really close to the edge with this because I do have some redness that I want to throw in there as well. So still on the middle trees layer. Kind of, oops, I'm still on that texture. Hang on. So let's just throw on our 5. Just kind of come in here and chuck this in here. Like I said, I just want to make sure I'm not completely obliterating anything with it, but I also want to make sure that I get it solid enough as a base. There's some stuff that's here too, but needs to be a little more red, maybe. You know, will be happening there. For the most part, that's a decent color. I think I need to be careful not to get it too dark. I am gonna put some darker branches over the top of that. So let's pull this down a little bit more. I think that works. For that area, we can come back in with our blender brush here, the one that I like the most. Just kind of pull some of this together, break it up, make it not so blobby and weird. Blobby, you know what I'm saying? Blobby. All right, good enough. And then we can go back with a thinner brush, you know, and start pulling out some of these sort of branches. This would probably be best to do later, but you know me. In fact, let's go with a more intense color on these with a little bit thinner brush. We can also use a gouache or something like that, you know, a more of a opaque watercolor on those as well. So I think that's looking all right. Probably even break this up more when I get, you know, farther along, but all these aren't as dark as these guys here, though, so we're just gonna throw in a little bit of stuff toward the front. These are just some dead branches and stuff coming out. They'll probably need to be a lot more reddish, you know, here and there, and not so strong, obviously. But a few of these stronger ones will mix into the rest of it, I think, pretty good. There's a lot more branches for, you know, the other areas like this as well. Just looking at references as well while I'm doing this. So you see me looking away a lot. Just trying to find some references I have on my desktop and or reference. So eventually you can get just some blobs happening instead. Don't do overlay your detail on top of until you get your under stuff done. All right, so that's all right. I think I'm gonna go now with my trees here and try to get a little bit of definition in some of these finally. I'll tell you right now, watercolor painting is probably one of the harder things if you've never done it. Even digital watercolor. It can be very easy once you get it, but then it can be very, well, you have to get the technique, you know what I mean? You just have to understand it. Okay, so slight bit of blending on those, I think. A tiny bit right through here. Not going to hurt anybody's feelings. Cool. All right. And now I think a little bit of line work over here on this dude was probably going to be appropriate. With our brush, of course. Just going to start throwing in some bits. Treify, you know, this area. Maybe even some larger chunks slightly. Not so pencil-y. Alright, maybe even the darker side now, same way. A little bit. Over here just to kind of extend this side out, not so cone-shaped. Not bad. We're going to blend a couple of those though. So just don't want to see that. Some of it I like, and some of it's got to go because you don't want it to feel like it was added after the fact. So I think that works pretty good. All right, now some reddish browns, I believe. Let me just find my eyedropper here. And just some kind of, I don't know, reddish tones in comparison. These are just kind of the redder foreground bushes here. I probably should go back and erase some of that, or make me another layer here, I think. Call this reddish foreground bushes. And then I can after I do this, I can come in and erase some of that stuff in the back. Just kind of jump these up and around the others. See if we need anything, maybe down here too. Some kind of a double layer there. And over here. And I'm going to come down to my blender a little bit more here. Kind of break this up. Alright, and then I'm going to go back to this, I think it was the middle tree layer, was it not? Yep. And I'm going to erase a little bit of these, maybe some of this brown that's behind these. Let's undo that. I'll blend this out, but I just want to make sure none of this has a weird edge to it there, like it does currently. Or isn't overly dark, of course, that I don't want. I think that's probably okay there though, but we'll go in now with the blender brush and start pulling this down. We don't have that heavy edge on any of that. Okay. That's all right. And then we'll go in and we're going to wind up putting in lines, like a lot of smaller, harsher lines that can now still feel a bit better than these. And then I will go in and put some actual painted, you know, kind of wispy stuff. As soon as I find me a nice grainy brush. These are bigger. Let's see. Grain, go away. Where are you, actually? Something like the sparse bristle. It's going to help really bring this out more like we want. And I will come in and blend this back. It's a little darker than I like, but this is why we put it on a separate layer yet again. And we'll go to our blender here and just kind of pull this stuff more together. I will add the paper texture back in. Not bad. We'll see what we get here once we throw this back on. Being very careful not to overdo it. It's kind of like adding grain back into an image or footage. Not sure what's going on there. I'll fix that. Cool. And then now let's go back to that brush, the same, if I can find that sparse bristle here. Yeah, that's got something weird happening there. What could it be? Is it because of that was erased? We can now, let's add some more in there. Gotta love that sound. Yeah, there's something odd happening there. Let's just see if it's got to do with this road brown. So let me try and delete that or erase that out of here. Not sure why that would affect it, but it does. Let's see. A little bit. And this, I think we need to go back here to our middle trees, I think is what we're looking at here. Yep. And I need to go ahead and erase probably some of that out or blend that back. So we'll just pull these down to here. See what happens when we do a bit of this. I'm also going to go to the sketch layer and erase our lines here that we're no longer needing, obviously. I love that part where I get to go in and get rid of the sketch. It just helps it feel a little more real, because you don't have this trace over feeling or anything like that happening. Let's get rid of that too. Okay, definitely more painting world. Let's go ahead and lock it. We will go back to our reddish browns, and they do look better now. I don't know if they're fantastic yet. Reddish stuff here. There we go. We're getting that color back that we were missing before, so that's good. And I can go back in now and re-blur them out a bit. It's a bit color heavy down there, but I think it's working fine. They can be pulled out saturation wise and all kinds of stuff, so we can even make them less opaque. Like that, and make that look nice. I'm just going to continue this whole thing with some of the same amount, and then we'll go back and redo the darker stuff after the fact. So I'm just going to sort of swirl this in here to get the ground sort of covered. We can blend this later. And then we can come back in here and just start adding more of the bushy stuff. Like that. I think that is working for me. We'll go back. Do a little blending here. Yes, I would love another cup. I think that's working all right. And if I want to, I can lighten stuff or go in and desaturate. There is a desaturation brush. In fact, this is an adjustment brush, but I can set this to be saturation. Or set, I believe, plus. Let's go to minus, and then I can go in here and say, please desaturate some of this. Actually, that's adding. So please desaturate some of this. Pulls the color out. I think it's working. Hard to tell, but yes, I believe so. So you get the idea. Hue and saturation minus. And it should be pulling out. Okay. So now back to our painting. Like I said, anytime we can lighten or desaturate or whatever we need to do. So we're going to go now to our layer. We're going to apply this. Let me see if I can just apply mask. No, we're going to have to no, we're not going to adjust that way. I want to, come on now. Can we just merge these? I did. I think it worked. I'm not sure. I think overall it did. It's a good question. But now, like I said, I can take this entire layer. We can drop back the opacity of it if we want to. Just give me more of a less intense color. Can adjust the levels of it. Instead of opacity, we can adjust the levels, and in adjusting the levels, we're going to be taking the... Really? the darkest part of the image and lightening it or darkening it or whatever we need to do here, like so. And then we can go back and adjust the saturation again if we need to.
You guys have another thermostat? Aside from this one right here?
Nope.
Is that the one you use?
Yep.
This, I don't think that, no, there's one behind it. This is the one that we use, I don't think.
Makes sense.
All right, cool. So I'll keep on working on this. I appreciate you guys watching. I'm going to go ahead and go for now. And I'll talk